Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. I haven't made any Commodore 64 repair videos in a while, and I actually still have more broken machines. So on today's video, we're going to try to repair some of these computers. I have 3 here, and maybe I'll get through one, maybe I'll get through all 3. It really depends on how easy the fix is for all of these. So if you like 8-bit computers, and you like repair videos, and you like the Commodore 64, then this video is for you. So without further ado, let's get right to it. The Commodore bread bin. I feel like I kind of got my start working on these machines. I mean, it's not really true, actually. Some of my earliest videos are PC videos and stuff like that. But I really kind of sunk my teeth into the whole retro repair thing with these machines. Now, these machines I know don't work, or at least don't work correctly. This one says it boots, but it has a dark screen and has interference. And this one here also boots, and it says it has interference. That's interesting. They have a similar fault. And the one on the right here says black screen, good voltage rails, some activity. That would mean some activity on the data lines or something like that. I must have looked around or poked around when I was originally diagnosing these machines. Why don't we start with one of these easy ones like this? I mean, easy may not actually be easy. We'll do the dark screen with interference one first. All right, so this computer's in decent shape. Someone wrote an X on here with a pencil. That was not me. It's got the RF shield in there. It means I haven't been mucking around in there too much, because you know, if I had, it would have been thrown away a long time ago. Let's crack this open and take a look. I don't think I've opened any of these up. I think when I did the testing, which would have been on probably a second channel video ages ago, I think I went through and tested all of these bread bins I had laying about and figured out all the bad ones. Put them in a pile over on the over there, and that's where I go and grab these from. Doing repairs on 64s, I don't know, it kind of feels like home. I don't know if it's easy, and maybe I feel like I'm a little bit out of practice right now, but ooh, we're talking about a Rev A machine here, and potentially an early one. Everything is socketed. It has a PLA here from 1984, which I'm assuming means that it was replaced at some point, because the date codes on the other chips are probably earlier. 1983 on the CPU there. The SID here, 82. We have a revision 3 kernel ROM, so that might have been replaced at some point after this machine was made as well. And these computers are 84. You know what? Okay, so we're seeing chips from sort of like all over the place. Now, since they're in sockets, things could have easily been replaced. Here's a chip from 1982, 28th week, 1982, 50th week. Looks like the DRAM is from 1982, 50th week as well, 82, 45th week. It feels like these chips were put in the end of 82, and then maybe the computer wasn't completed. It was just socketed, and no main ICs were installed until later. I heard that was actually something that Commodore did. When they were manufacturing these computers, a lot of times they would run out of these custom ICs, so they would socket any of the ICs that they didn't have in stock, which maybe on this machine was basically everything, or at least all the custom ICs that MOS made, and then they would put the system aside. And then as stock would come in on the various ICs, they would pull those machines back and populate the boards. Maybe this one was made in 1982, because this is an old Rev A or B or C, whatever. It's the early revision of the NTSC North America board here. And then they stuck it aside, and they didn't get back to it until 83 or 84 when they populated the rest of these chips. It's hard to say, and it's really impossible to know what's happened to this thing, because of course, it could have been opened up a million times and lots of chips swapped on it over the years, but it looks like maybe that's how this thing came to be. Now, right off the bat, what I want to do is I want to remove this piece of cardboard. I really don't like this. And typically there's a piece of tape here, and I can tell that it was there at some point. See, it's a little bit shinier right there, a piece of copper tape that would tape this down. So it definitely tells us that someone has been in this computer before. I also notice here, and I don't know if I've ever noticed this before, but there's usually a screw there in the middle, and I can see that there's actually a standoff for it on the case there, but it's not on the board. Let me grab another motherboard here. See, this is a later revision, and it's got the hole there. But do these early Rev A's not have that? I don't know. I don't really remember. And this is actually a Rev A. You can see it says Rev A right there. And the rest of the screws do seem to be installed correctly, and just looking here, everything looks fine. Now, according to my message here, it does say it boots, so let's just plug it in and me stop blabbering on about it. Let's see what it's actually doing. Now, I probably said this a bunch of times before, but these boards only have a 5-pin DIN jack. Wait, what? Wait, what? I mean, what? No. These only have 5-pin DINs. What is this? I talk about eat my words. Here happens to be another one of these early boards, and this one is so early, it's in its original case, and it has the original 64, like the gold label or silver label or whatever it's called. Unfortunately, that one's missing. I never got that one. But this one has the appropriate 5-pin DIN jack there. What the heck happened here? Was this some kind of mod? Now I gotta take this apart. We gotta look at the bottom side here. Was this some type of mod done? Because this was sold much later and they wanted to make sure that it was compatible with the 1701 monitor, well, the S-video cable, of course. I don't know. Now I'm very confused. One thing to notice, the bottom of the case is in good shape. These little things aren't broken, so that's kind of cool. All right, so it's got an RF shield on it. There's certainly a lot of what look like fingerprints, so someone's been mucking around on here. I'm just warming up the desoldering iron here to get this shield off, and I'm noticing, check this out, there's a cut trace right there. So I'm assuming we're gonna see some bodge wires on the bottom of this that someone did at some point to add that jack. Okay, so what do we think we're gonna see under here? Oh yeah. I don't think that was done by the factory, that's for sure. Nope. Although I don't know what kind of glue this is. I don't think it's just hot glue. Now interesting is, look at these weird scratches over here. What's this all about? I almost feel like maybe this board was stacked on another one with the pointy parts facing each other and dragged around. I don't really see, I don't know what could cause that. Unless Wolverine was working on the board. I mean, look at this mess down here. Interesting. I'm gonna say the RAM is original. Don't notice any rework. Obviously, to use these types of DIN connectors, you gotta remove the old one, drill some holes in the board that look like they were done reasonably well. This wire here goes over here to the video section for the Luma signal, or Chroma signal, I mean. It looks like they had accidentally bridged this and that, and then they had to cut that. So part of me thinks that these types of mods should be undone. That this thing is just put back to its original 5-pin connector, but I don't know. What do you think about that? Let's take a look under here. Yeah, looking inside here, everything seems fine. The dark video problem has to do, I think, with R11 here. I'm gonna have to look it up. We're gonna need to bodge on an extra resistor onto the top here, or just replace that one, and that'll brighten up the video signal. Let's take a look at what type of VIC this is, because generally these ones always came with the earlier VIC. Yeah, we have a 6567 R8 from 37th week 1984. So that kind of coincides with the rest of these Logic ICs. Yeah, I kind of have the feeling that maybe this thing was like a warranty return. It was sitting around the back of a store, and then they decided to actually resell it. So they replaced all the ICs with the modern ones and the version 3 of the kernel and the latest VIC-2. And then they swapped out the video connector, so you couldn't tell without opening the machine that this was one of the old revisions of the boards. And whoever did this work obviously took the time to reapply the RF shield, which is kind of unusual. I feel like if a hobbyist had done this work here, they wouldn't have put the shield back on the bottom. That's just extra work and doesn't really do anything. So this board is, how should we say, mildly interesting. Let's power this thing up and see what it's actually doing. Now, one of the things about this early boards is this little voltage regulator here, it just gets burning hot. Obviously, these old boards are all, you know, sporting these things, but that's the entire heatsink this thing has, and it's completely inadequate. And Commodore fixed that on the later revisions of all the C64 boards, and they basically put a larger heatsink on that on the PCB, and it only gets mildly warm. All right, let's see if this thing is working or not. Okay, yeah, it's fine. It's just really dim. So part of me wonders why I wrote interference on that little note there, because this doesn't look like it has any interference. It just seems like it's got the Rev A problem with the wrong resistor value there. Okay, so if you have a Rev A board like this and you have dark video, the issue is this resistor here, R10. Commodore put the wrong value in on some of the early boards right from the factory. Kind of interesting that whoever did all this work on this board didn't actually fix this problem, but maybe this wasn't super known at the time. Not totally sure about that. What you can do is piggyback a resistor on top of R10, and I'm holding a 100 ohm resistor there. I think 150 is the value that people say you should use. But ultimately, I don't know, I don't have 150 handy, so we're just gonna use this 100 ohm resistor because it seems to work totally fine. Now the RetroTink, which is what I'm connected to here, does some kind of like self-equalization stuff, which is why colors look so oversaturated right now. I think if you plug this into a real monitor, it would just be really dark. And all you'd have to do is turn up the brightness control on your monitor, and that would fix the issue. At least it would work around the issue. So with the system off, we're getting 300 ohms for the resistor that's on there right now. Let's take a look at the schematics for this original board. Now, one thing that's interesting about it is it does not use the RF modulator to actually create the video signal. On the later versions, it's actually the RF modulator that does that. So if you remove the RF modulator, you have no video signal at all. But you can see the color and the sync and luma comes out of the VIC-2, and it gets combined with this circuit right here and goes directly to the actual connector on the back of the board. So composite video, that's the one we're connected to right now. R10 was the resistor that we have on the board with the wrong value, and it says 120 ohms here, and it's a 300 ohm on this board, and when I added 100 ohm, that brought it down to 75. So a little bit too hot of the main part of the video signal. So maybe I have a 220 ohm resistor right here, which should be about 126 ohms, a lot closer to the original value that Commodore spec'd. Actually, looking at this a little closer, they used 120 ohm here instead of a 75. I think it should be 75 if you ask me. All right, so we're just gonna parallel the resistor onto this. So we just tin this a little bit. Let's just parallel this resistor onto here. If you're doing that, you can just leave the leads on there just for holding purposes and then cut it off after the fact. Well, like a doofus, I soldered on the wrong resistor. I had them both sitting here and I put on the 100 ohm. So there we are at 75, which is the wrong value. So let's get that off. Alrighty, new resistor is attached. Let's see what we have now. We should have about 126, 124. Pretty close to what it should be. Nice. All right, so let's see what's going on now. Of course, the RetroTink is doing its thing, being silly, which it always does. But I think we're gonna have a much, much better looking picture once it figures its junk out. And yeah, that looks really quite good. Really, yeah, much better now. Test harness is connected. Let's get the diagnostic ROM in there. Power this on. All right, looks good now. I don't see any interference, so I think my note, maybe the dark color tricked me and made me think that there was some interference, but seems that this computer is operating perfectly. You know what? Part of me wonders too, under this label, right. No wonder why the PLA works. Well, Sid is definitely making sound. It's just at the end of the test here. But we have a full, complete pass there, and I just need to do a test with the SID, but everything seems to be working properly. But as I was saying, I was suspecting that PLA works because this is not the MOS crap PLA. This is an A2S100 from Signetics. These are very reliable. They can fail, but they are far better than the junk that Commodore was putting out. Those things are very, very failure prone. If you have one of these types of PLAs that says 82S100 on it, these are the original PLAs that Commodore was using, and then they basically cloned it. So if you have a 64 that has an A2S100 PLA like this, and you have a black screen, I wouldn't immediately go to this as the failure. I would suspect other things first. Of course, if you have a later bread bin that has the MOS PLA, then you can pretty much suspect that the PLA is more likely to be bad. Okay, so this is completed a couple passes there. It's looking pretty good. Let's switch over to, I think, some sound. Now, one thing about these is that the Easy Flash does not work in these, not without a mod. And I don't remember off the top of my head what that mod is. I don't know why I unplugged the video. Now, when you power on the system, it will give you the boot menu, but if you actually try to do anything, it will give you this rainbow pattern on the screen. And if we hit a key on the keyboard, there we go. Keyboard's not working very well, but it does that. There is a fix for this. It doesn't really affect anything else though. It mainly affects just the Easy Flash cartridge. So we're not gonna use this for the diagnostic testing. And I'm gonna switch over to Kung Fu Flash, which I don't think has any kind of issues. Looks like the last thing I did on this was play a game of Hero, which I'm assuming works fine. And I need to plug a joystick in. Game's working, sound is working. I like this game. The Commodore 64 version's good, but it's good on everything else too. Even the Atari 2600 version, which I think is the original version, is quite a good game. Okay, well, let's get back to the menu here. Let's exit out of here. Oh, you know what? I guess it does affect the Kung Fu Flash as well. Interesting. It has to do with the reset circuit on the board, and I don't remember what the yeah, because I can't escape out of this. Let's try doing it as soon as I power the system on. Ah, there we go. Oh, what happened? Ah, you know what? Maybe I will have to do the fix because I just cannot escape out of here. No, it just does not work. Okay. So my recollection is the fix is something over here. I have to cut a trace and put a bodge wire or something like that. Looks like there's already been some work done here. There's a little wire here. All right, a little bit of reading later. This problem affects both this Rev A board and the Max, Commodore Max that is. So the issue here is this 555 timer. I know it's a Motorola part, but it's the same as I think a 556, I think. So what we need to do is install a 1K resistor into R36 here, and then I need to cut the pin on the chip itself right there. So this black wire that goes between these two pins, it needs to stay there. But I need to cut the pin that goes from the motherboard to the body of the chip, and that should fix the problem. The problem has to do with the way the reset circuit works on this board, and apparently this part here can drive way too much current and it overwhelms these cartridges, which rely on resetting the machine. So the resistor has been soldered in, but that's not enough. We now have to cut this pin here. So pin 9, I'll just count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I need to cut it between the board and the chip. And these cutters are just no good. And hopefully you can see that that is now cut. So the wire is still in place. It needs to be there, but we needed to disconnect the chip from the motherboard. So let's try powering up the machine, make sure it still works. Okay, good. It's still working. If the reset circuit weren't working, then the machine wouldn't boot properly. So there we go. Now when I push the button here, oh yeah, okay, good. There we go, we can get right to the menu. Sweet, so this problem affects far more than the Easy Flash. So if you have one of these Rev A boards, I highly recommend doing this mod. So you install a 1K resistor down here in the R36 position, and if there's already one there, then you just leave it. And then you just have to cut that pin between the motherboard and the chip body, but you have to leave the little wire that's there. That needs to be there for this to work. All right, so now I can navigate this using the joystick here. Let's see here. We need to see if the SID is working. I will need the keyboard actually for this program, I think. I don't think it supports the joystick. Nope, it does not. All right, enter key. Oh boy. Feels like there's a stuck key on here or something. Weird. Oh no, the SID's broken. No, this is no good. All right, so I just made sure that we are recording the audio so I can cut to a direct feed of what this sounds like. So Cybernoid 2, which I was trying to play, and this keyboard is very much misbehaving, it does not sound like this. Okay, well, there's something wrong with the keyboard here because I plug it in, the music starts playing, I unplug it, it stops playing. I'm gonna switch to the ZIF 64 keyboard since I know that this one is working better. And we do know that from the diagnostics run we did, there's no issue with the keyboard input or the CIAs. They're fine because they would have tested bad. There's definitely just something wrong with that weird keyboard. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, this is working properly now. Here we go, let's try this again. Cybernoid 2. Oh. It sounds fine. So that keyboard was doing something weird. Something stuck down on it. I almost condemned the SID to being bad. I think there is something wrong with this SID actually. It doesn't quite sound right. And I'm used to all of these songs and none of these sound like they're working properly. Nah, this is very messed up. All right, why don't we switch over to the SID from the other machine? That way you can hear what that song is supposed to sound like if you're not super familiar with it. This SID has, all the voices are working fine on this SID. The problem is the filters are messed up. And unfortunately, if you have any kind of demo, like we were just playing, or not demo, any kind of complicated music that really takes advantage of the filters, it's gonna sound pretty screwed up. All right, the ZIF 64's SID is in the machine. The original one that was acting up is right there. So let's just go through this. So Ode to 64, here we go, listen to this. So it always sounds a little bit distorted. That's normal, but it was kind of fading in and out with the other one. So back on the marginal SID, this is where you can be tricked. If you're looking to buy a SID and they even have like it playing the sounds out of the Diagnostic ROM, those sounds usually work fine. The issue comes when you try to play more complex songs because of all the filters that are used, but even some of these songs probably sound fine. So this song here, if you didn't know the song better, you might think it's fine. Some of the notes just don't come through very clearly because of the bad filters. Because I didn't record the actual Diagnostic ROM playing, let's do that so you can hear how that sounds. Oh no, I thought I fixed the issue with the Easy Flash, but I guess I didn't. Well, Kung Fu Flash is fixed, but, oh, what? Okay, so must be just on the edge of working or not working. That's kind of interesting. I was reading a thread on fixing the problems with the Easy Flash on this version of the board, and they said the 1K resistor was all you needed, but maybe we need a higher value resistor there. One thing I'm noticing is I feel that the video is maybe a little bit still too dim. So the value of the resistor that I used, maybe I should have used that original one that gave effective 75 ohms instead of 120. Okay, here we go with the sound test. You see that? That sounded pretty normal. There was a little bit of like weird noise in there, but to be honest, I've heard that out of a lot of SIDs. And you would think if you heard that and you were looking to buy a SID online, that SID is good, but this SID is definitely not good. So I'm giving this the old M for marginal. I always write that on them when there are issues. In fact, I'll use a more visible Sharpie here. We'll put the old M on there. Just because it works, it's better than nothing, and simple games will sound fine. But the issue is that you try to play better, more complex things, and it's gonna sound kind of crappy. All right, so this little thing here, by the way, it's been on for I don't know how many minutes there. It is, I can't even touch it, it's so hot. Absolutely ridiculous. It's gotta be pushing the 7805 beyond its limits. It doesn't seem to cause any issues. I mean, obviously this is an old machine, it probably got used a lot and it still works. But one thing I've seen people do is they'll remove that from the board and they'll actually screw it down into this RF shield, or they'll do it on here. And that turns this into a big heat sink, or that into a heat sink, which is way better than this little junk that's on here. This is it's just too small. All right, so machine number one. Didn't really have any real issues. The only true issue with this thing is the resistor I had to fix. I fixed the reset circuit so it works better, at least for running these modern cartridges. And then we have a marginal SID, which I'm not going to do anything about right now. I'm going to say that's a problem for the next owner of this machine, along with trying to clean this keyboard. probably just needs to be taken apart and the whole cleaning process done to it, and then it will work fine. Once those two issues are fixed and this machine is cleaned up, I think that's going to make a nice Commodore 64. Don't really see any issues with this thing on the case at all. It's in really good shape. Nothing's broken. It's just dirty. That's it. Okay, well, I grabbed the next machine, number 10 here, that has the same interference issue. I have a feeling because this has a 5-port DIN, we're going to have the same exact issues. Look, you can see the gold shield here. So we know that this is just an old Rev A board. I don't think there's anything wrong with this either. Probably, it could be exactly the same if we look inside with the socketed chips and everything, but I'll just give it a quick once over. We have a ceramic character ROM. Interesting. Do we have that mod over here for the reset? Nope, that's not done. We have an 82S100 for the PLA, so this thing probably works. Let's pop off this, see what we see under here. So the thing about the original VIC-2s that are on these, the ceramic ones, these are often earlier versions. They're not the R8s. Just put a little IPA on there to help with that. That means that they not only have much poorer video quality, but they also have, I think, less luma levels, so they don't really look good. And indeed, you can see there, it's a R56A. So this is one of the original ones that would have come in this machine originally, 1982, 82. Yeah, I'm thinking that this thing, look, we have a version 2 of the kernel ROM, so that's the older version. That's 83, but 6th week. And we have 2nd week of 83. But the fact that this stuff's all socketed again means that this thing could have been built up. Like I said before, you know, all of these chips soldered into it. And then at some point later, the rest of these populated and this thing shipped out the door. Yeah, I'm seeing stuff from 1982 on here as well. R10 gives us 300 ohms, the wrong value again. Okay, I bodged on a 100 ohm resistor onto here, so 75 ohms total for this part of the circuit, and I cut the pin on there, and I added the 1K just from the top side of the board here without even taking this thing out or taking the RF shield out. All right, let's see what we get when we turn this thing on. We have a working system. Yes, okay. And the poor video quality is a function of this VIC-2 chip. It's just not that good. You get some color fringing around the edges, and yeah, it's just kind of how it is. All right, here we go with the diagnostic test harness. Oh, maybe it would help if I plugged in the cartridge. Yeah, it's kind of necessary for running the diagnostics. Oh, just the VIC is so bad, but the brightness is better. I'm going to say that maybe 100 ohm is the resistor that you should be adding to that circuit there. Yeah, that color fringing just sucks though, doesn't it? And there's no way to avoid that because there's no luma chroma. If you swap out the VIC and you put in an R8 like the other one had, it's going to look a lot better. But unfortunately, that's just par for the course with this old VIC chip here. Okay, we're on the sound test and sounds fine. Hopefully it works. Okay, yeah, it sounds fine. So hopefully it's working fine when we play some actual music. Music, that is, yes. All right, keyboard is connected and I've unplugged the video cable again. I keep doing that. I unplug the harness and I pull everything off and I plug off, or take the video off, which I should not do. Let's just make sure that reset fix is working. Oh yeah, good, that works. Okay, let's go down to Ode to 64, which we know had so much issues on the other SID. It's probably going to be fine on this one. Interesting is it actually sounds maybe a little bit better than the SID that I have in my ZIF 64. That had a little bit more distortion, although this is the later AR4 version of the 6581, and this is obviously just a 6581 with no revision, so it's like the very early ones here. I do want to test that the Easy Flash is working in here. Let's just see what happens here. Ooh, it looks bad, but yeah, the colors are weird because again, it has less luma levels. Yeah, we're able to load here. So I don't know, it kind of freaked out that one time on the other one, but this one with the reset fix is okay. Right, so this machine had absolutely nothing wrong with it. I know the note, which I think it was this one here, has interference, was a lie, because it clearly has no interference. And other than the fact that the keyboard probably isn't working properly, this thing is working great. And it's gonna be a reliable 64 in that it has the good PLA in here, and everything else has sort of lasted this long. I guess the issue is it has a version 2 of the kernel ROM, which does have some bugs in certain programs and stuff. But this indeed is a good specimen of an old Rev A motherboard, at least. Doesn't seem to have the matching case though, because it doesn't have the silver label. It's also kind of funny that I did those fixes on this machine without even taking the board out. So if you have one of these, I'm missing one of the screws, here it is right here. If you have one of these machines, you can install that resistor, cut that pin, and add the other resistor for the video circuitry, all from the top side without even taking the RF shield off. So nice, just another dirty 64 that's fully working now. And that brings us to our problem child here, the one that says black screen, good voltage rails, but has some activity. Someone put a button on here for some reason. That's kind of amusing. It's missing one of its feet. It's missing 2 of the 3 case screws, so it just has one in the middle. Could be that the case itself has broken, so those don't stay on anymore, but we'll find out shortly. Ooh, yep. Oh, keyboard's unplugged. Oh, you know what? I've been inside of this thing, right? Because obviously if I was testing the voltage rails and stuff. Wow, okay, well we have another machine. Look how clean this motherboard is. This thing looks like brand new other than a bit of corrosion on there. I mean, this is amazing. All socketed ICs, fantastic. This shield is missing. Is the bottom shield missing? No, the bottom shield is there. We have an 82S100 PLA. The PLA is an 82S100. Now, it doesn't say that on here. Notice it says PLS100, and that's because Philips bought Signetics, even though it still has the S logo on there, and they changed the model number, but it's still the same programmable chip. This was programmed with the equations for the PLA, and it's not made by MOS, and it's actually reliable. I think these run pretty cool as well. We have a original 6581 SID there. Looks like a bit of stuff on the board here. What's happening with that, I wonder? Has this been reworked? I don't think it's been reworked, because you can kind of tell when you look at the RF shield here. It's the way it's soldered onto the board looks like, you know, if it was reworked, you can kind of tell there's a bunch of extra flux and stuff. This does not appear to have that. So I just think it's kind of curious that there's this brown stuff around the tops of these chips here. Interesting. Oki RAM, so we don't have the junky MT, but we do have a MOS chip over here. I have a little cheat sheet here to help me remember what's what. So this is a 7707, which is an LS06. So those are really common and easy to find. I think this has something to do with the reset circuit as well. So that could be causing our issue. Interesting, a little bit of stuff on there. Yeah, these go bad pretty frequently. No other MOS chips on here when it comes to the logic IC, so that's kind of cool. These are in sockets, 40th week of 1983. Yeah, things are looking pretty good. A little bit of dirt there on the board. Everything else seems okay. This fuse is okay. I already checked the voltage rails, but we'll do that again. Yeah, the heatsink on here is a lot better, and I think there's a lot less strain on the 7805 than on the previous revision of this board. Everything else on here looks really good. Very clean machine. So let's do a quick test on this. I'm assuming we're gonna get nothing. Yeah, getting the black screen. What I'm gonna do, we're just gonna feel for chips getting extremely hot. Yeah, I'm not really feeling anything when it comes to heat. Obviously the VIC and the SID are getting hot, but that's normal. I mean, they're not even hot, they're just getting warm. But the rest of these ICs are fine. Let's check these logic ICs here. This all seems okay. Now let's think about common failures on these types of machines. The kernel ROM or any of the ROMs, they seem to go bad quite a bit. The PLA, if it was a MOS PLA, those go bad, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's interesting that people put these yellow dots on everything. Now, the character ROM is not in a socket, so it's almost feeling like perhaps that these were indicators that, okay, this machine is ready to go. I'm not sure, or this was tested or something. I don't think this is done recently necessarily. Now, the fact that it's all socketed makes troubleshooting really easy, but that's not really fair because most 64s aren't like that. So you can't just remove all the chips and, you know, hope for the best. The ideal troubleshooting steps would be use a dead test ROM, take out the 3 ROM chips or the 2 that we can take out the SID and take out the 2 6526s and then see what happens at that point. because if any of these chips are bad, that can keep the system from booting, give you a black screen, and it will prevent the dead test from even running. Of course, before you do that, you should definitely double check that the voltage rails are good. And why don't we just do that for posterity's sake? Even though I said on my note that I already did that, let's just quickly do that again. All right, let's make sure it's on DC mode. Let's power this on. And let's check that these are outputting the correct voltages, 5.01. That looks really good. This is supplying power to the VIC, I think the SID chip as well. And then the 12 volt regulator here is also supplying power to the VIC and the SID chip. Now there's also 5 volts that comes in from this, and if you don't know if your power supply is good or not, then you should test, one of these logic ICs here, and we're getting 4.91 volts. So there's no issues like the power switch or any kind of weird voltage drop or whatever. And then we can go on to any of these chips and it's going to be the same, 4.91 volts, no problem. So yeah, all the voltage rails are looking good. And with the video cable plugged in, we're getting a black screen. And that means that there's a video output right now. If there was something wrong with the clock circuit or the VIC2 was totally dead or removed, you would have absolutely nothing on the screen at all. So I think at this point, I'm gonna pop in the dead test ROM here and let's just see if the dead test actually can do anything. I'm not holding my breath here. A lot of times if something is like killing the data bus, oh, well, right. There we go. I was like, I was not holding my breath that this is gonna work. What happens if something is killing the data bus, then the dead test ROM won't run because it needs to be able to communicate to the CPU and everything else, or really the CPU needs to be able to read from the cartridge. And if something is dead, or say the PLA is dead, or it's crashing and causing a bus conflict, and of course the cartridge is not gonna work either. But this is just working flawlessly, and this kind of tells us one thing immediately, that I bet you there's something wrong with the kernel ROM. And I think it's just dead. It's not like it's causing a bus conflict. I think this chip is like the equivalent of it just being removed. Could well be the PLA as well, because the PLA is what selects the ROM. But ultimately, we're not getting, we weren't getting anything. We're just getting a completely dead machine. And here it is, running the dead test perfectly. Yeah, let's see if it passes the RAM test here. Well, the RAM test passed. And now it's running the sound test, and it sounds fine as well. So that means that the SID is mostly functional. Like I said, I think the problem is gonna be, it's gonna be the kernel ROM. Oh, look, I changed color on the border to tell you, hey, I'm on my second pass. That's cool. All right, like just for fun, I'm gonna flip my cartridge around and we're gonna try running the regular diagnostic. I don't think it's gonna work because you really need the kernel working, I think, for the regular diagnostic ROM, but let's just try it. Yeah, nothing. Okay. How about the Easy Flash? Let's just try that just for fun. Let's see if this works. No, that doesn't work either. I'm assuming all this stuff just needs the kernel to actually operate properly. All right, well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that I think the kernel is the problem. Although, you know what we can do before we take that out? Let's grab an oscilloscope. Let's check the chip select line on the kernel ROM here. And we'll just make sure that it's actually getting selected. I'll use this Zoe scope here. If the basic ROM weren't working or the character ROM weren't working, like say they were dead or removed from the board, then what would happen is the machine would still kind of boot up. You'd get like the blue borders and everything. You just wouldn't get any working characters if the character ROM were bad, or you wouldn't have any basic. It would just be a blank screen. So the chip select line we're looking for is pin 20 on these ROM chips. So I'm on pin 20 here. Let's turn on the computer. And what's happening here? We're not really seeing anything. Oh, I'm at 100 volts per division. Yeah, always check your scope that you're in the right mode. Yes, that's much better here, isn't it? And there we go. That is a normal chip select activity. Let's just turn it off and on. The PLA is what is selecting this. I must be in AC coupled mode, which is why this looks kind of funny. Yeah, there we go, DC, much better. So that is normal chip select activity for this ROM chip. So that tells us the PLA is at least kind of doing its job. And that gives me, well, that pretty much tells us for sure that it's gonna be this ROM chip that is the problem. So if this were soldered in the board, I would be desoldering it right now. And of course it's not, so it's easy to just pop out. I have this C64 board here, which I've sort of designated as the spare parts board. So we're gonna take that chip from there and into this board, that ROM chip goes. And here we go. Is this machine gonna work? Yep, that was it. We just have a bad kernel ROM, that was it. Diagnostic harness is all connected up. I actually have the cartridge in for once. Let's turn this on and let this run through. Hopefully we have a fully operational machine. Yeah, the R8 VIC looks a lot better than the junk on the other one, the R56. And yeah, the image just looks a little bit brighter. Interesting. It's just the way the video signal's made on these later breadbins. It's just better. And obviously you could do the mod inside the RF modulator to even sharpen the image more. I made a video about that a while back. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description below. But I have a feeling, yeah, this one is gonna work. You don't need to do any kind of reset mods on this thing to use these cartridges. These will all work fine on here. And let's get the speaker turned up. Well, we know the sound actually was working, so we don't even need to listen to that. I just want to see a successful completion with the harness connected. Oh yeah, we've done it. Sweet. Yeah, this thing works. Okay, everything is functional on here. All we had was simply the bad kernel ROM. Frankly, who knew that this would be such an easy repair-a-thon where all three of these machines really had extremely minor issues or no issues at all. What I want to do is double check to make sure the SID is working properly. Here we go. So this one has a little bit of that distortion that wherever it is, here it is, that the AR4 version of the SID here has, the one I have in my ZIF box. I still think that's fine. You have to remember that the SIDs are analog synthesizers and they're old, so things have sort of aged inside there and they all sound a little bit different at this point. Let's try Cybernoid. Okay, well, that is a good SID in this machine. This thing really is great. The only thing left to do in this video, because I've gone through all three of these machines, is of course, we gotta listen to the 8-bit dance party. I mean, it's a requirement, right? It's a given. We can't have a video without this. It's not possible. It's illegal. It's against the law. All right, there we go. This is now a fully functional Commodore 64. All three of these are working perfectly now. I guess the only thing is that one of them has that marginal SID chip that doesn't sound quite right, but the rest of these are working perfectly now, and I even did the reset mod, so whoever gets those machines after me won't have any trouble with these more modern cartridges with that whole reset circuit. So there we go. That was a little Commodore 64 mini repair-a-thon. 3 machines are fixed, and that's great actually, because they've been sitting on the floor over there for at least a couple years at this point. So it's good that I can finally move them on and I don't have to look at them anymore. But don't worry, I have more broken 64s. I have more motherboards that don't have cases that are bad. And what I really probably should do at some point is go through all my 64s that I have, because I personally in my own collection have a good amount of them. I bet you some of those are broken now. So I should probably, maybe it'd be a good second channel video. I'll just like get the test harness out and go pull all of my 64s in from around the house. I have like boxed examples and things like that, and get them all out and then test them all. Because it's just not possible that I have however many machines in my house, plus a bunch of motherboards that are fixed, that I keep in storage, you know, as backups. There's gotta be broken motherboards. There has to be. It's completely impossible that all my 64s have stayed working all this time. So anyhow, if you like this 64 repair video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, but if you didn't, you know exactly what to do. Huge thanks to my patrons. Their names are scrolling beside the screen over here. They make it possible to do this full time. You can become a patron, link below. Subscribe, it really helps me out. I really appreciate it. And I guess that's gonna be that. So stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you next time. Bye.